Hey there, how's it going? Thanks for joining me today. Whether you're relaxing at home, on your commute, or winding down for the evening, I'm really glad you're here. Now, I want you to imagine something with me. Picture this. It's 66 million years ago, and somewhere in the darkness between Mars and Jupiter, there's a mountain of rock and ice hurtling through space. This thing is massive, 10 miles wide, which might not sound like much until you realize that's bigger than Mount Everest lying on its side. And it's moving fast, 12 miles per second fast. That's so quick it could cross the entire United States in about 6 minutes. But here's where our story takes a turn that changes everything. In the final hours of its approach to Earth, something shifts. Maybe Jupiter's gravity tugs just slightly differently than it should have. Maybe a close encounter with our moon alters the trajectory by 0.001 degrees. We're talking about the tiniest of changes here. Imagine trying to adjust a bullet's path by breathing on it. The asteroid screams past Earth, missing our planet by 6,400 miles. Now, I know what you're thinking. That sounds like a lot, right? But in cosmic terms, that's like a bullet passing through your hair instead of through your heart. That's the difference between existence and oblivion, between the world we know and a world that never was. Let me walk you through what this moment actually means. Think about threading a needle while you're riding a roller coaster. That's the kind of precision we're talking about when it comes to asteroid impacts. Celestial mechanics work like invisible ropes of gravity, constantly tugging and pulling on everything in our solar system. Every planet, every moon, every chunk of rock is connected in this vast cosmic dance. Picture yourself standing on Earth during those final hours, completely unaware that your entire future hangs in the balance. The dinosaurs are going about their business. Maybe a triceratops is munching on some ferns, or a pack of velociraptors is hunting in what will someday be Montana. Life is continuing, as it has for millions and millions of years. Nobody knows that high above, death is supposed to be approaching at 12 miles per second. But here's what's wild about this whole thing. The miss doesn't happen because of one single factor. Oh no, it's way more complicated and fascinating than that. There's something called the Yarkovsky effect, and it's one of those discoveries that just blows your mind when you really think about it. Basically, sunlight can actually push asteroids around. I'm not kidding. The sun heats up one side of a spinning asteroid, and when that heated side rotates away from the sun, it radiates heat into space. That radiation creates a tiny, tiny thrust, like the world's smallest rocket engine. Now, this push is incredibly small. We're talking about a force that would feel like a feather landing on your hand. But over millions of years, over hundreds of millions of miles, these tiny pushes accumulate. They add up. They change trajectories in ways that can mean the difference between hitting a planet and missing it entirely. And it's not just the Yarkovsky effect. Gravitational perturbations from passing comets play their part too. Imagine our asteroid on its journey through space, and every so often a comet zips by. Each close encounter changes the asteroid's path just a little bit. Most of these changes are so small they're barely measurable, but they're real. And over the vast timescales we're dealing with, barely measurable becomes absolutely crucial. So, here we are, following this cosmic billiard ball as it approaches the moment of truth. For millions of years, every gravitational tug, every solar photon, every close encounter has been building toward this instant. The asteroid is locked in what scientists call a gravitational keyhole, a narrow pathway through space that determines whether it hits Earth or sails harmlessly past. Think about standing at the edge of a cliff and someone is trying to hit you with a baseball from a mile away while they're riding on a speeding train. That's essentially what's happening here, except the baseball is the size of a mountain, the train is the solar system itself, and the target is our entire planet. The moment arrives. The asteroid, this 10-mile wide harbinger of doom, reaches the point where Earth's gravity should capture it and pull it down into our atmosphere. But instead, and this is the part that gives me chills every time I think about it, instead, it keeps going. The angle is wrong by just the tiniest fraction. The speed is just a hair too fast. The gravitational dance between Earth, Moon, and asteroid creates a slingshot effect that sends this mountain of destruction sailing past us and out toward the outer solar system. From space, if you could somehow watch this happen, you'd see this dark object streak past our blue marble and continue on its journey. From Earth's surface, you'd see absolutely nothing. Life continues. The age of dinosaurs continues. Everything that was supposed to end keeps going. But let's think about this from different perspectives, because that's where this story gets really fascinating. From Earth, that day 66 million years ago is just another day. The sun rises, the dinosaurs hunt and feed and reproduce. The early mammals scurry through the underbrush. There's no flash of light, no impact crater forming in what we call the Yucatan Peninsula, no debris shooting up into the atmosphere to block out the sun for months. Just another day in the Cretaceous period. From the asteroid's perspective, and I know this sounds crazy, but stay with me, this near miss changes everything about its destiny. Instead of smashing into Earth and creating the crater that would have ended the age of dinosaurs, it gets a gravitational slingshot that sends it on a completely new trajectory. It's like a cosmic pinball that was headed straight for the bumper but got nudged at the last second and went spinning off in an entirely different direction. And from our perspective, here in the present day, this is where things get really mind-bending. We can actually calculate backwards and figure out exactly how close we came to never existing. Using sophisticated computer models and gravitational calculations, scientists can trace that asteroid's path and determine that it missed us by a margin so small it's almost incomprehensible. Here's the thing that really gets me. If that asteroid had hit Earth as it was supposed to, the impact would have released energy equivalent to about 1 billion atomic bombs. The immediate effects alone would have been catastrophic. We're talking about earthquakes that would have registered magnitude 12 on the Richter scale. That's off the charts. Tsunamis, thousands of feet high, washing over continents. Debris blasted so high into the atmosphere that pieces of Earth would have rained back down as molten rock, turning the sky into a blast furnace. But the real killer would have been the impact winter. All that debris thrown into the atmosphere would have blocked out the sun for months, maybe years. Global temperatures would have plummeted. Photosynthesis would have essentially stopped. The food chain would have collapsed from the bottom up. It wouldn't have been quick, and it wouldn't have been merciful. Instead, because of gravitational perturbations accumulated over millions of years, because of the Yarkovsky effect pushing our cosmic bullet just slightly off course, because of 1,000 tiny factors that had to align in exactly the right way, that asteroid sailed past us. Earth continued its ancient dance around the sun, carrying its cargo of dinosaurs and early mammals and all the other life forms that were supposed to die that day. Now, you might be wondering, what happened to that asteroid? Where did it go after it missed us? Well, that's part of what makes this story so incredible. After getting that gravitational slingshot from Earth, it continued outward, past Mars, past the asteroid belt, into the outer reaches of our solar system. Some computer models suggest it might have eventually been captured by Jupiter's gravity, becoming just another small moon in that giant planet's collection. Others suggest it might have been flung completely out of our solar system, condemned to wander the galaxy forever as a rogue asteroid, carrying with it the story of the world it almost destroyed. But here's what really keeps me up at night thinking about this. In some ways, that asteroid is still out there, somewhere in the cosmic dark. a 10-mile wide reminder of how different everything could have been. How close we came to a world where mammals never got their chance, where intelligence never evolved the way it did, where you and I would never have existed to have this conversation. The precision required for this near miss is so extraordinary that it makes you wonder about the nature of chance itself. We're talking about factors that had to be calculated to 12 decimal places. The gravitational influence of Jupiter had to be exactly right. The asteroid's rotation had to create exactly the right amount of Yarkovsky thrust. The timing of its encounters with other objects in the solar system had to be perfect. It's like winning a cosmic lottery where the odds are so astronomical that the human mind can barely comprehend them. And yet, it happened. 66 million years ago, in the darkness of space, fate rolled the dice and decided that the age of dinosaurs would continue. So what does this mean for the world that followed? What happens when you take away extinction's hammer blow and let evolution continue writing its story without interruption? What happens when the dinosaurs get not just a reprieve, but 66 million more years to see what they can become? That's where our journey really begins. Because missing that asteroid didn't just save the dinosaurs, it fundamentally rewrote the entire story of life on Earth. And trust me, you're not going to believe what happens next. The age of dinosaurs was supposed to end on that day 66 million years ago. Instead, it was just getting started. Without extinction's hammer blow, the age of dinosaurs stretches onward into what I can only describe as an endless summer. And when I say endless, I mean it. We're talking about 66 million more years of uninterrupted dinosaur evolution. That's longer than the entire age of mammals in our world. That's enough time for evolution to work magic that would make our imaginations look limited. Let me take you on a journey through deep time, because what happens next is going to blow your mind. By 50 million years ago, that's 16 million years after the asteroid missed, something remarkable is happening in what we call Montana. Remember Troodon? Those small, nimble dinosaurs with the relatively large brains and forward-facing eyes? Well, their descendants have been busy. Picture this. These aren't the sluggish, cold-blooded swamp dwellers you see in old movies. These creatures are warm-blooded, covered in beautiful feathers that shimmer with iridescent colors. And here's the kicker. Their brains are 3 times larger than their ancestors. 3 times. We're talking about dinosaurs with brain-to-body ratios that rival some modern birds. And we know how smart birds can be. But brain size is just the beginning. The real revolution is happening in how they use those brains. These Troodon descendants have developed something that sends chills down my spine every time I think about it. Complex social hierarchies and communication systems that use over 200 distinct vocalizations. 200! That's more than most human languages have basic phonemes. Think about that for a second. While early mammals in our world were still figuring out how to not get eaten, these dinosaurs were developing what can only be called proto-language. They're using specific calls to indicate different types of prey, different levels of danger, different social relationships within their pack. They have alarm calls that can convey not just danger, but aerial predator approaching from the northwest at medium altitude. Now, let's hop over to South America, because evolution never puts all its eggs in one basket. In what we'd call Argentina, the titanosaurs, those long-necked giants, have been growing. And when I say growing, I mean these things are reaching lengths of 150 feet. To put that in perspective, that's half a football field of dinosaur. Their necks alone are so long they can browse vegetation 40 feet off the ground. That's like reaching up to the 4th floor of a building to grab a snack. But here's what's really wild. It's not just their bodies that are growing. Their brains are evolving too. We already know from fossil evidence in our timeline that late Cretaceous theropods had enlarged cerebral regions associated with problem solving. Now imagine what happens when you give natural selection not just a few million years to work with that, but 15 million years without any major extinction events to reset the evolutionary clock. The story gets even more incredible when we jump forward to 30 million years after the miss. Some of the smaller theropod lineages, descendants of creatures like Compsognathus, have developed something that makes my mind reel every time I think about it. They've evolved opposable digits, not quite thumbs like ours, but close enough. Specialized claws that can work together to manipulate objects with precision, and they're using these new tools in ways that would make early humans jealous. They're using sticks to extract insects from tree bark, selecting just the right thickness and flexibility for the job. They're using stones to crack open shellfish, and not just any stones. They're choosing specific types of rock based on hardness and shape. Some groups are even modifying their tools, breaking stones to create sharper edges, stripping bark from sticks to make them smoother. This is technology, plain and simple. These dinosaurs are making and using tools with a sophistication that our early human ancestors wouldn't achieve for millions of years. And they're doing it with claws and beaks instead of hands. But the real breakthrough comes 20 million years after the asteroid miss, in the forests of ancient Asia. This is where the story takes a turn that still gives me goosebumps. A lineage of social raptors, think velociraptor, but bigger and smarter, develops the first true proto-language among dinosaurs. It starts simple, as these things always do. Different calls for different situations. But over thousands of generations, something remarkable happens. The calls become more complex, more nuanced. They start to combine calls to create new meanings. A danger call combined with a directional call becomes threat from the north. Add in an intensity modifier, and suddenly you have major threat from the north. Before long, these dinosaurs are having what can only be called conversations. They're planning hunts in advance, discussing strategy, even sharing information about events that happened in the past. One member of the pack can tell another about a water source they found 3 days ago, or warn about a dangerous predator they encountered last week. And then, 10 million years after the miss, something happens that changes everything. Some of these intelligent raptors in Asia make a discovery that will echo through the rest of Earth's history. They discover fire. Now, I want you to picture this, because it's not happening the way you might expect. These creatures don't have hands like we do. They can't rub sticks together or strike flint with their fingers. Instead, they've learned to use their specialized toe claws, those sickle-shaped talons that made their ancestors such formidable predators, to manipulate flint with surgical precision. Imagine watching one of these creatures work. They hold a piece of flint steady with one foot while using the claw on their other foot to strike it against a hard surface. The sparks fly onto carefully prepared tinder, dried grasses and shredded bark that they've learned catch fire easily. They blow gently with their snouts to nurture the tiny flames into a real fire. This is the moment that changes everything. Fire means cooked food, which means better nutrition, which means more energy available for brain development. Fire means protection from predators and the ability to extend their active hours into the night. Fire means the beginning of true technology. By 15 million years after the miss, these fire-using dinosaurs have become something unprecedented in Earth's history. They're not just using tools anymore. They're making them. They're crafting specialized stone implements, each designed for specific purposes. Cutting tools for processing meat, digging tools for excavating burrows, even primitive weapons for hunting larger prey. Their social structures have evolved to match their technological capabilities. These aren't just packs anymore. They're communities. They have designated roles, with some individuals specializing in toolmaking, others in hunting, still others in what can only be called primitive agriculture. They're managing their environment, encouraging the growth of certain plants they find useful while discouraging others, and their communication has evolved into something truly remarkable. By this point, they have what can only be called a true language. They have grammar, syntax, the ability to discuss abstract concepts. They can plan not just for tomorrow, but for next season. They can share knowledge across generations, with older individuals teaching younger ones not just how to hunt, but how to make better tools, how to find the best stones for flint, how to identify which plants make the best tinder. But perhaps most remarkably, they've developed something that might be the most important cognitive leap of all. They've learned to think about thinking. They're aware of their own awareness. They can contemplate not just what is, but what could be. They're asking questions about their world and figuring out ways to find answers. This is the birth of true intelligence on Earth, but it's wearing feathers instead of fur. It's using claws instead of hands. It's built on millions of years of uninterrupted evolution that was never supposed to happen. And this is just one lineage, just one branch of the dinosaur family tree. Remember, there are dozens of other lineages evolving in parallel, each finding their own solutions to the puzzle of survival, each developing their own unique forms of intelligence and technology. The age of dinosaur civilization has begun, and we're only getting started. Because while these remarkable creatures are developing fire and language and tools, something else is happening in the undergrowth beneath their feet. The mammals, our ancestors, are writing their own story in this strange new world. And it's not the story you might expect. The eternal shadow of the dinosaurs is about to teach us something profound about evolution, adaptation, and the countless different paths that life can take when given the chance. In the undergrowth of this alternate Earth, while dinosaurs are building their civilizations and mastering fire, our ancestors are living a completely different story. And I want you to understand something right from the start. This isn't a story of failure or tragedy. This is a fascinating exploration of what happens when evolution takes a radically different path, when natural selection has to get creative in ways we never imagined. Picture this. It's 40 million years after the asteroid miss, and the largest mammal on Earth never exceeds the size of a house cat. Never. While in our timeline, mammals were exploding into every conceivable ecological niche, becoming giants like elephants and whales, taking to the skies, conquering the seas. Here, they remained forever small, forever hidden, forever ingenious. Let me take you into the trees of ancient Africa, where a family of small mammals is going about their daily business. In our world, these creatures would become early primates, the ancestors of monkeys, apes, and eventually us. But here, with intelligent dinosaurs ruling the skies and the ground, these mammals never get their chance at dominance. Instead, they become something else entirely. These squirrel-sized creatures have developed the most extraordinary camouflage abilities you can imagine. Their fur doesn't just blend in with their surroundings. It actively changes color like a chameleon's skin. But unlike chameleons, which change color relatively slowly, these mammals can shift their appearance in seconds. One moment they're brown like tree bark, the next they're green like leaves, then dappled like sunlight filtering through the canopy. Think about the evolutionary pressure that created this. Every day, for millions of years, their ancestors faced death from above. Sharp-eyed raptor descendants patrol the skies and the treetops, their vision so acute they can spot movement from hundreds of yards away. The mammals that survived were the ones that could disappear, that could become invisible, that could make themselves one with their environment. But evolution didn't stop there. These creatures have developed something even more remarkable. They can change not just their color, but their pattern. When they press against the rough bark of a tree, their fur develops a bark-like texture. When they hide among leaves, their coat takes on the veined pattern of foliage. They've become living masters of disguise, shapeshifters that would make a Hollywood special effects team weep with envy. Now, let's travel to ancient Pakistan, to a very different story. In our timeline, there was a group of early mammals here that eventually returned to the sea and became whales, some of the largest creatures ever to live on Earth. But in this world, with the seas dominated by massive marine reptiles that never went extinct, these proto-whales never make it back to the ocean. Instead, they go underground. And when I say underground, I mean they become the most sophisticated burrowers Earth has ever seen. These mammals have created vast underground networks that stretch for hundreds of miles beneath the surface. Think of them as the subway systems of the mammalian world, complete with multiple levels, interconnected tunnels, and specialized chambers for different purposes. These aren't just random burrows, these are engineered systems. The tunnels are angled to provide optimal air circulation. There are dedicated chambers for food storage, nurseries for raising young, and even communal areas where different families gather to share information through complex scent communications. The mammals themselves have evolved to match their environment. Their eyes have grown huge to capture every photon of available light in the dim underground passages. Their whiskers have become incredibly sensitive, able to detect the slightest air currents that might indicate a tunnel breach or the approach of a predator. Their claws have become specialized digging tools, capable of carving through soil and soft rock with remarkable efficiency. But here's what really gets me. By 25 million years after the miss, some of these underground mammals have developed something that puts modern technology to shame. They've evolved echolocation abilities that surpass even the most sophisticated bats. Picture this: complete darkness, hundreds of feet underground, and these creatures are navigating complex three-dimensional tunnel systems using nothing but sound. They emit ultrasonic clicks with their specialized throat structures and process the returning echoes to create detailed mental maps of their environment. But unlike bats, which use echolocation primarily for navigation and hunting, these mammals have turned it into a form of communication. They can transmit detailed information through echolocation. Not just "there's a tunnel to the left," but "there's a tunnel to the left that slopes downward at 15 degrees, connects to the main thoroughfare in about 50 meters, and was recently used by the Johnson family, who passed through carrying dried roots and mushrooms." Other mammalian lineages have taken different approaches to survival in this dinosaur-dominated world. In the dense forests of what we'd call Europe, some mammals have developed the most sophisticated pheromone communication system ever recorded. They're essentially speaking in chemistry, using thousands of distinct chemical compounds to create what can only be called scent languages. Imagine being able to communicate complex ideas through smell alone. These mammals can leave scent messages that persist for weeks, telling other members of their species not just "I was here," but "I was here 3 days ago. I was healthy and well fed. I found good foraging to the north, but there's a raptor nest about 200 meters northeast that's been active recently, and I'm planning to return to this area in about a week." They have chemical words for concepts like time, direction, quantity, quality, danger level, and social relationships. A mother can leave a scent trail for her offspring that tells a complete story: where she's been, what she's found, what to avoid, and when she'll return. It's literature written in molecules, poetry composed of pheromones. But perhaps the most remarkable adaptation comes 35 million years after the miss, when something unprecedented happens in the relationship between mammals and dinosaurs. Some ground-dwelling mammals develop what I can only describe as the ultimate survival strategy. They become indispensable. It starts small, as these things always do. Some mammals begin following the intelligent raptor packs, feeding on the scraps and insects stirred up by their hunting activities. The raptors initially tolerate this because the mammals are too small to be worth hunting, and they don't compete for the same food sources. But then something fascinating happens. The mammals start providing services. Their incredibly acute hearing and sense of smell make them excellent early warning systems. They can detect threats that even the sharp senses raptors miss. The subtle vibrations of an approaching predator, the scent of danger carried on the wind. Over thousands of generations, this relationship deepens. The mammals become more than just tolerated hangers-on. They become partners. Not equals, mind you, but valued partners, like working dogs in our world. But the relationship evolved naturally rather than through human intervention. The raptors learned to interpret the mammal's warning signals. A sharp chirp means aerial danger. A low growl means something large is approaching through the underbrush. A specific scent marking means the area has been contaminated by toxic plants or dangerous chemicals. In return, the raptors provide protection and share food. The mammals get to live in the safest places on Earth, right next to the most effective predators. They develop specialized behaviors for this partnership, learning to stay out of the way during hunts, but being ready to provide assistance when needed. Some mammalian species even develop specialized physical adaptations for this relationship. Their vocalizations evolve to match the frequency ranges that raptors hear best. Their scent glands develop chemical compounds that raptors find pleasant rather than threatening. They become, in essence, the perfect companions for an intelligent dinosaur civilization. This partnership model spreads across the globe as different mammalian species form similar relationships with different dinosaur lineages. In Asia, small mammals partner with the tool-using theropods, helping to locate the best stones for napping and the ideal plants for tinder. In South America, mammals develop symbiotic relationships with the giant long-necked browsers, serving as lookouts and parasite removers in exchange for protection and food. But even in these partnerships, mammals never become equals. They remain the junior partners, the supporting cast in a drama where dinosaurs are eternally the stars. They're forever ingenious, forever adaptive, forever finding new solutions to the challenge of survival in a world not made for them. And yet, in their own way, they're incredibly successful. They've survived and thrived for 66 million years longer than they ever should have. They've developed technologies and capabilities that mammals in our world never dreamed of. They've proven that intelligence and adaptability can triumph over size and dominance, that there are many ways to win the game of evolution. By 15 million years after the miss, the mammalian world has become a hidden civilization running parallel to the dinosaur one. Underground networks spanning continents, chemical communication systems that would put our internet to shame, partnerships with the dominant species that benefit everyone involved. They've created a shadow world of incredible sophistication and beauty. But the mammals aren't the only ones adapting to this strange new Earth. The climate itself has been writing a radically different story, one that's about to reshape the entire planet in ways that will challenge every living thing to adapt or perish. The greenhouse Earth is about to intensify in ways that will make our modern climate change look like a gentle spring day. Without the asteroid impact's reset button, Earth's climate has been writing a radically different story for the past 66 million years. And when I tell you how different, you're going to have trouble believing we're talking about the same planet. By 40 million years after the miss, there's no ice anywhere on Earth. Anywhere. The polar ice caps that have defined our world's climate for millions of years simply don't exist. Sea levels sit 300 feet higher than in our modern world. 300 feet, to put that in perspective, if you were standing in downtown Miami in our timeline, you'd be underwater by about 250 feet. Florida doesn't exist as we know it. It's an archipelago of tiny islands poking up through warm tropical seas. The entire southeastern United States is underwater, transformed into a vast inland sea that stretches from the Atlantic coast to the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. But that's nothing compared to South America. The Amazon basin, that vast green lung of our world, is an inland sea stretching from the Atlantic Ocean all the way to the base of the Andes Mountains. We're talking about an area larger than the Mediterranean, filled with warm, nutrient-rich water that teems with life forms we can barely imagine. Let me take you on a journey across this alien Earth, because what you're about to see will challenge everything you think you know about our planet. We're starting at the North Pole, and I want you to forget everything you've ever seen in documentaries about polar bears and ice sheets. There's no ice here. Instead, there are tropical rainforests flourishing under the midnight sun. Picture this. It's midsummer at the North Pole, and the sun hasn't set in months. But instead of shining down on white ice and snow, it's illuminating a green cathedral of towering trees. Massive ferns unfurl fronds the size of car hoods. Flowers bloom in colours so vivid they seem almost artificial. And in the sky above this polar paradise, insects the size of dinner plates patrol the warm, humid air. These aren't just any insects, they're giants. Dragonflies with 3-foot wingspans cruise through the oxygen-rich atmosphere like living helicopters. Their wings shimmer with iridescent blues and greens, catching the never-setting sun as they hunt smaller flying creatures through the steamy air. The atmospheric oxygen content is nearly 30%, compared to 21% in our world, and this supercharged atmosphere allows insects to grow to sizes that would be impossible under normal conditions. The swamps that cover most of what we call Canada are like something out of a fever dream. Vast wetlands stretch to the horizon, filled with water so warm you could take a comfortable bath in it. Giant lily pads float on the surface, some of them large enough to support the weight of a full-grown person. And beneath the surface, the water teems with life forms that have had 66 million years to evolve without major interruptions. But how did Earth become this greenhouse paradise? The answer lies in what didn't happen all those years ago. In our timeline, the asteroid impact kicked off a series of ice ages that periodically locked away enormous amounts of carbon dioxide in ice sheets and permafrost. These ice ages acted like planetary thermostats, preventing Earth from becoming too warm. But without that impact, winter to reset the system, Earth's climate has been on a one-way journey toward ever-increasing warmth. Volcanic activity has continued pumping carbon dioxide into the atmosphere for 66 million years without any ice age cycles to lock it away. The greenhouse effect has been intensifying decade by decade, century by century, millennium by millennium. It's like someone left the planetary heater running and threw away the thermostat. By 20 million years after the miss, average global temperatures have reached 90 degrees Fahrenheit. 90 degrees as an average, which means the hottest regions are approaching temperatures that would kill most life forms we're familiar with. The equatorial regions have become almost uninhabitable, except for specially adapted creatures that have evolved remarkable strategies for dealing with extreme heat. Let me take you to the equator, to regions that have become alien even by this alien Earth standards. Here, during the day, surface temperatures regularly exceed 130 degrees Fahrenheit. That's hot enough to cook an egg on a rock. The air shimmers with heat waves so intense they create optical illusions, making the landscape appear to ripple and flow like water. But life finds a way. It always does. The dinosaurs here have evolved adaptations that would make a desert survival expert weep with envy. Their scales have become mirror-like, reflecting heat and light like living solar panels running in reverse. They've developed complex cooling behaviors that border on ritual, elaborate dances, and postures designed to maximize heat loss and minimize heat absorption. During the day, most large dinosaurs retreat to underground burrows that honeycomb the landscape. These aren't simple holes in the ground. They're sophisticated climate-controlled environments. The dinosaurs have learned to engineer their burrows to take advantage of thermal dynamics, creating natural air conditioning systems that keep the underground chambers comfortable even when the surface is blazing hot. They emerge only at night, when temperatures drop to a merely uncomfortable 100 degrees or so. In the cooler darkness, the landscape comes alive with activity. Herds of specialized browsers emerge from their burrows to feed on plants that have adapted to photosynthesize during the brief twilight hours. Predators patrol territories that stretch for hundreds of miles, following migration routes that have been passed down through thousands of generations. The plant life in these equatorial regions has evolved into something that would seem more at home on an alien planet than on Earth. In the hottest areas, forests of giant fungi dominate the landscape. These aren't the small mushrooms you find in your garden. These are towering structures that can reach heights of over 100 feet. Their massive caps create shade that allows other life forms to survive in the protective shadows below. But here's what's truly mind-blowing about these fungal forests. They're all connected. Underground, their root systems have merged into networks that stretch for thousands of miles. These mycelial networks function like biological fiber optic cables, allowing the fungal forests to share nutrients, water, and even information across vast distances. When one area experiences drought or extreme heat, other areas can provide support through these underground highways. The oceans have undergone their own dramatic transformation. Ocean currents have reorganized completely, creating a single massive current system that circles the globe at the equator. This current is like nothing that exists in our world, a river of warm water that flows around the planet with such force and consistency that it generates permanent weather systems. These permanent weather systems include hypercanes, hurricanes, that last for years with winds exceeding 400 miles per hour. 400 miles per hour. That's fast enough to strip bark from trees, to turn sand into a cutting tool that can carve through solid rock. These hypercanes are so massive they can be seen from space as permanent fixtures in Earth's atmosphere, like living mountains of cloud and wind that never dissipate. But even these extreme weather systems have become part of the ecosystem. Some flying dinosaurs have learned to ride the edges of these hypercanes, using the incredible winds to travel vast distances with minimal energy expenditure. They've developed specialized navigation abilities that allow them to find the sweet spots in these storms, areas where the wind provides lift without the destructive turbulence. Marine life has adapted to this new oceanic reality in ways that boggle the mind. In the superheated equatorial seas, some creatures have evolved the ability to enter a state of suspended animation during the hottest months, essentially hibernating underwater until conditions become more favorable. Others have developed internal cooling systems that work like biological refrigerators, allowing them to maintain comfortable body temperatures even in water that approaches hot tub levels. The polar regions, meanwhile, have become paradises of biodiversity. Without ice to constrain them, life forms have exploded into every conceivable niche. Arctic forests support creatures that would have been impossible in our colder world. Mammals the size of house cats scamper through tropical vegetation where polar bears should be walking on ice. Birds with wingspans measured in meters soar through air so warm and humid it's like breathing soup. And throughout this greenhouse world, the carbon cycle has entered a state of unprecedented acceleration. Plants grow faster and larger than ever before, but they also decompose more quickly in the heat and humidity. Carbon moves through the biosphere at rates that dwarf anything seen in our cooler world. The very rocks are weathering faster, releasing minerals and nutrients that fuel explosive biological productivity. This greenhouse Earth has created evolutionary pressures unlike anything our world has ever experienced. Species that can't adapt to the heat disappear within a few generations. Those that can adapt often undergo rapid evolutionary changes, developing new body plans and behaviors in geological time periods that are incredibly brief by normal standards. The dinosaurs, with their 66 million years of uninterrupted evolution, have become masters of this superheated world. They've developed technologies and behaviors that allow them to not just survive, but thrive in conditions that would kill most life forms from our timeline. They've learned to harness the planet's thermal energy, to use the predictable patterns of the hypercanes for transportation, to time their activities around the daily and seasonal thermal cycles. But this greenhouse world is still changing, still warming, still evolving. By 10 million years after the miss, some regions are approaching the theoretical limits of habitability for complex life. The question isn't whether life can adapt, it's whether life can adapt fast enough to keep up with a climate system that shows no signs of stabilizing. And in this race between evolution and environmental change, something remarkable is happening. Multiple forms of intelligence are emerging simultaneously across the planet, each finding their own solutions to the challenges of survival in a world that tests every possible adaptation. The stage is being set for evolution's alternative masterpiece, a symphony of consciousness unlike anything our universe has ever seen. Evolution, denied its mass extinction reset button, has been writing an entirely different epic for the past 66 million years, and what it's created is nothing short of a masterpiece. Not one form of intelligence emerging on Earth, but 5 completely different types of consciousness arising simultaneously across the planet. Each one has found its own unique solution to the puzzle of awareness. Each one represents a different path that thinking beings can take. Let me take you beneath the waves first, because that's where one of the most remarkable stories is unfolding. In the depths of Earth's superheated oceans, the descendants of ancient cephalopods have built something that would make human architects weep with envy: the first true cities beneath the sea. By 35 million years after the asteroid miss, these octopus descendants have undergone a transformation that solves one of biology's fundamental limitations. You see, cephalopods in our world are incredibly intelligent, but they're limited by their soft bodies. They can't grow very large because they have no internal support structure. But evolution found a solution. These deep-sea cephalopods have evolved rigid internal structures, not quite bones like ours, but cartilaginous supports that run through their bodies like living scaffolding. Imagine flexible rods of cartilage that can bend and twist, but still provide structural support. This allows them to grow to enormous sizes while maintaining the flexibility that makes cephalopods so remarkable. Picture creatures the size of small whales, but with the problem-solving intelligence of octopuses and the structural support to build permanent structures. They've created cities that stretch across the ocean floor for hundreds of miles, vast complexes of chambers and corridors carved into underwater mountains and grown from specially cultivated coral. But here's what really gets me. They've developed agriculture, underwater agriculture. They farm vast gardens of algae and kelp, carefully tending crops that they've selectively bred over millions of years. They raise smaller mollusks and crustaceans in what can only be called aquatic ranches, managing populations with the same care that human farmers show their livestock. Their communication system is something out of a science fiction dream. They communicate through rapid color changes across their skin, but it's not just simple signaling. They've turned their entire body surface into a living display screen. They can show patterns that combine words, emotions, and music into complex visual symphonies. Imagine being able to speak, sing, and paint all at the same time, using your entire body as both the instrument and the canvas. When 2 of these creatures have a conversation, it's like watching a light show choreographed by beings who think in colors we don't have names for. They can display complex mathematical equations across their tentacles, while simultaneously showing emotional responses on their heads and playing musical patterns along their bodies. It's communication raised to the level of high art. Now, let's soar upward to the canopy of South America's vast forests, where an entirely different form of intelligence has emerged. Here, descendants of pterosaurs, those flying reptiles that ruled the skies alongside dinosaurs, have developed something that would make human mathematicians envious. These aerial creatures have evolved their intelligence around the demands of three-dimensional flight in complex environments. Their society revolves around elaborate aerial formations that require precise calculations of wind speed, thermal columns, and three-dimensional positioning. They've become living computers, capable of performing calculations in their heads that would require our most advanced software. By 25 million years after the miss, they've developed the first written language that isn't scratched onto surfaces or painted on walls. Instead, they weave information directly into their nests. These aren't just places to raise their young, they're libraries, archives, and computational centers all rolled into one. Imagine nests that are woven according to complex mathematical principles, where the pattern of the weaving itself contains information. The angle of each stick, the type of material used, the spacing between elements, everything is significant. A single nest can contain the equivalent of thousands of pages of information, encoding everything from weather patterns and migration routes to mathematical proofs and astronomical observations. These aerial mathematicians have become the first creatures on Earth to develop systematic astronomy. They track the movements of stars and planets with precision that rivals our modern instruments. They've identified patterns in celestial mechanics that allow them to predict weather systems months in advance. They navigate not just by landmarks, but by the positions of stars, the phases of the moon, and the subtle gravitational influences of distant planets. But perhaps most remarkably, they've developed a form of mathematics that's perfectly suited to three-dimensional thinking. While humans often struggle to visualize complex spatial relationships, these flying creatures think naturally in terms of multiple dimensions. They've discovered mathematical principles that we're only beginning to understand, and they've encoded this knowledge in their nest libraries for future generations to study. Meanwhile, in the grasslands of Africa, a third form of intelligence has emerged that challenges our very understanding of what consciousness means. Here, descendants of ancient social insects have achieved something unprecedented: collective consciousness on a scale that spans entire continents. Individual ants in these supercolonies remain relatively simple, not much different from their ancestors. But the colonies themselves have evolved into something that can only be described as a single, vast, thinking entity. We're talking about colonies that contain trillions of individuals, connected by chemical communication networks that span thousands of square miles. By 20 million years after the asteroid miss, these colonies have begun building structures that are visible from orbit. Vast geometric patterns carved into the landscape, massive earthworks that serve simultaneously as cities, computers, and works of art. The patterns aren't random, they're functional, serving as giant computational matrices where information is processed through the movements of millions of individual ants. Think of it as a biological computer where each ant is like a single neuron, and the colony as a whole functions like a brain. But this brain is spread across an area the size of Texas, and it's capable of thoughts and calculations that operate on timescales we can barely comprehend. The colony mind can consider problems that span decades or centuries, developing solutions through the collective intelligence of trillions of individuals working together. These super colonies have developed a form of agriculture that transforms entire ecosystems. They don't just farm specific crops, they engineer entire landscapes, creating complex relationships between plants, animals, and environmental conditions that maximize productivity across vast areas. They've essentially turned huge swaths of Africa into a single, carefully managed garden. Back on land, but in a completely different environment, the dinosaur civilizations we met earlier have continued their technological development in ways that astound me every time I think about them. Remember those fire-using raptors from Asia? By 20 million years after the myths, they've discovered metallurgy. But here's what's incredible. They've done it without hands. Their technology is entirely based on precise manipulation using their feet and jaws. They've developed sophisticated mechanical systems, think of them as foot-operated and jaw-controlled machines, that allow them to work metal with incredible precision. They've learned to build furnaces that use volcanic vents and geothermal energy, carefully channeling natural heat sources to achieve the temperatures needed for metalworking. Their tools are operated through complex systems of foot pedals and jaw cranks, allowing them to shape metal into everything from cutting implements to decorative art. Their cities are marvels of engineering adapted to their unique anatomy. Buildings are designed to be navigated and operated by creatures that move primarily on two legs and manipulate objects with their feet and mouths. They've developed architectural principles that are completely alien to human sensibilities, but perfectly suited to their needs. But the most surprising contender for intelligence on this alternate Earth comes from the most unexpected source, the Arctic fungi we glimpsed earlier. By 15 million years after the myths, these organisms have achieved something that might be the most alien form of consciousness our planet has ever produced. Remember those massive fungal networks that connected across continents? They've evolved into something unprecedented, a single, planet-spanning intelligence. The mycelial networks that originally developed to share nutrients have become a biological internet that processes information on a global scale. This fungal overmind doesn't think the way animals do. It doesn't have a centralized brain or nervous system. Instead, it thinks through chemical signals that travel through networks that literally span continents. Its thoughts operate on timescales that range from minutes to millennia. It can consider the slow drift of continental plates, the gradual evolution of species, the long-term patterns of climate change. By 10 million years after the myths, this fungal consciousness has achieved what might be called philosophical awareness. It contemplates questions about existence, consciousness, and the nature of reality through chemical conversations that involve its entire billion-mile nervous system. It's like having a single, vast mind that spans the entire planet, thinking thoughts too large and slow for any individual creature to comprehend. And here's what really blows my mind. All 5 of these forms of intelligence are aware of each other. The cephalopods in their ocean cities have developed ways to communicate with the aerial mathematicians. The fungal overmind exchanges information with the ant supercolonies. The dinosaur civilizations have learned to interpret the chemical signals that represent the planet mind's thoughts. They're not just coexisting, they're collaborating. Each form of intelligence brings its own unique perspective and capabilities to problems that no single species could solve alone. The aerial creatures provide global reconnaissance and weather prediction. The underground fungal networks share information about geological changes and long-term environmental trends. The ocean dwellers explore the 3/4 of the planet that remains largely unknown to land-based life. It's a symphony of consciousness, unlike anything our universe has ever produced. 5 completely different types of minds, each one representing millions of years of evolution, each one offering a unique solution to the puzzle of awareness and intelligence. And they're all facing the same challenge, because 10,000 years ago, something happened that shook all of these civilizations to their core. The most advanced among them, the tool-using descendants of Troodon, made a discovery that would fundamentally change how they understood their place in the universe. They discovered exactly what had almost happened 66 million years ago, and that discovery changed everything. 10,000 years ago, in a world that would be unrecognizable to us as Earth, the most advanced sapient species on the planet, made a discovery that shook their civilization to its very foundation. These beings, let's call them the thoughtful ones, descendants of those clever Trudons we've been following, had built a society that was both alien and remarkably sophisticated. Picture their capital city rising from the landscape of what we would call the American Southwest. It's a marvel of engineering adapted to creatures that think with their claws and build with their feet. Tall, spiraling towers curve gracefully skyward, their surfaces covered in intricate patterns that serve both as decoration and as three-dimensional writing systems. These aren't buildings in any sense we would recognize. They're living structures, grown as much as built, incorporating plants and fungi into their very foundations. The discovery begins in their equivalent of an observatory, a magnificent structure that crowns the highest tower in the city. Here, astronomer priests track the movements of celestial bodies using instruments that are marvels of precision engineering, all operated through the delicate manipulation of claws and tails. These instruments are like nothing humans ever conceived, complex mechanical computers carved from stone and metal, designed to be operated by beings whose primary manipulative organs are their feet. Our story centers on a young researcher named, let's say, Keen Eye of Stars, working the night shift in this cosmic temple. She's been tracking asteroids in the outer solar system for years, following their paths with the patient dedication that has made her people master astronomers. But tonight, something catches her attention that shouldn't be there. In the data from the past several months, she notices a cluster of asteroids in the outer solar system with orbital characteristics that don't make sense. Their paths are too regular, too organized. It's as if something massive passed through that region and scattered these smaller objects into patterns that follow mathematical rules rather than random chance. Intrigued, Keen Eye of Stars begins working backward through the calculations. Her people use a base 12 mathematical system, counted on their 12 primary claws, and their numerical thinking is both elegant and sophisticated. Night after night, she traces the orbital mechanics further and further back in time, using the vast computational power of their mechanical calculating engines. What she discovers keeps her awake for weeks. The gravitational resonances in the asteroid belt, the unusual distribution of debris in the outer solar system, the peculiar patterns of crater formation on the far side of the moon, everything points to a single, impossible conclusion. 66 million years ago, something enormous passed very close to Earth. Something that should have hit but didn't. But it's not until she begins examining the geological record that the true magnitude of her discovery becomes clear. Working with teams of scholar diggers who excavate ancient rock layers with the same precision their ancestors used for hunting, she makes the discovery that changes everything. There is a complete absence of iridium in the rock layers from 66 million years ago. Now, let me explain why this is so significant. In our timeline, one of the key pieces of evidence for the asteroid impact is an iridium layer found in rocks from that period all around the world. Iridium is rare on Earth, but common in asteroids, so its presence in those ancient rocks tells us that something from space definitely hit our planet. But in this alternate world, there is no iridium layer. None. The rock record shows no evidence of any impact at all. The absence of evidence becomes evidence of absence. Keen Eye of Stars realizes that whatever approached Earth 66 million years ago missed. The gravitational signatures she's been tracking in the outer solar system are the remnants of that near miss, the scattered debris field left behind by an object that should have ended the age of dinosaurs but didn't. But here's where the story becomes a political and philosophical thriller. This discovery doesn't just challenge scientific understanding, it threatens the very foundation of her civilization's belief system. For millions of years, the thoughtful ones have believed that their ancestors were chosen by the Sky Father to inherit the Earth. Their creation myths, their religious systems, their entire understanding of their place in the universe is built on the idea of divine selection. The evidence that Keen Eye of Stars has uncovered suggests something far more unsettling, that their existence is the result of pure chance, a cosmic accident of timing and trajectory that could just as easily have gone the other way. Word of her discovery spreads through the academic community like wildfire. Teams of researchers begin re-examining everything they thought they knew about their world's history. The evidence becomes overwhelming. Computer models reconstructed using their mechanical calculators show exactly how close that ancient asteroid came to hitting Earth. We're talking about a miss measured in thousands of miles, practically nothing on cosmic scales. The political implications are immediate and explosive. The priestly caste, which has governed their society for thousands of years based on the doctrine of divine selection, sees this discovery as a direct threat to their authority. If the thoughtful ones weren't chosen by the gods but simply got lucky, what does that say about the divinely ordained social order? Religious riots break out in the outer provinces. Some groups embrace the new discovery, developing what they call the philosophy of cosmic gratitude, the idea that their existence is so improbable and precious that every moment should be treasured. Others reject the evidence entirely, clinging to traditional beliefs and declaring the astronomical data to be the work of demons or false gods. The crisis comes to a head when Keen Eye of Stars is summoned before the Great Council of Wisdom, the governing body of their civilization. The scene unfolds in their magnificent council chamber, a vast circular hall carved into the living rock of a mountain, its walls covered with murals depicting the great moments of their history. The debate that follows lasts for days and nights. Keen Eye of Stars presents her evidence with mathematical precision, using their great mechanical computers to demonstrate the orbital mechanics that led to their near extinction. The priestly caste responds with theological arguments, claiming that the near miss itself was evidence of divine protection rather than random chance. But the younger generation of scholar priests see something different in the data. They realize that if existence balanced on such a knife's edge, if their entire civilization exists because of a cosmic near miss that could have gone either way, then every other world in the universe faces similar knife edges. This realization transforms their understanding of their place in the cosmos. They begin to see themselves not as the chosen inheritors of Earth, but as incredibly lucky survivors of cosmic roulette. And if they're lucky survivors, then there must be other lucky survivors out there among the stars. The great debate concludes with a decision that splits their civilization. The traditionalists retreat to the southern continents, maintaining their belief in divine selection. But the progressives, led by Keen Eye of Stars and her followers, embark on an ambitious new project, searching the cosmos for other intelligences who won their own cosmic lotteries. They begin construction of massive observational arrays, mechanical computers so large they require entire cities to operate them. Their goal is to scan the nearest star systems for signs of other worlds that experienced their own near catastrophes and somehow survived. Within a few generations, they make contact. Faint signals from a dozen nearby systems tell stories remarkably similar to their own. A planet where silicon-based life evolved to dominance after carbon-based organisms were wiped out by solar flares. A world of eternal storms where intelligence emerged in the calm eyes of perpetual hurricanes. An ice planet where consciousness developed in liquid methane seas beneath miles of frozen water. Each contact reinforces the same profound truth, that intelligence seems inevitable given enough time and stability, but its form depends entirely on historical accidents. Every thinking species they encounter has its own story of near extinction, its own cosmic close call that allowed consciousness to emerge rather than perish. The discovery that began with astronomical observations becomes a philosophical revolution. The thoughtful ones develop new concepts of existence based on probability rather than destiny, on chance rather than choice. They create art forms that celebrate the beautiful fragility of consciousness, mathematical proofs that demonstrate the elegant improbability of awareness arising from matter. But perhaps most importantly, they develop a new sense of cosmic responsibility. If consciousness is so improbable, so fragile, so dependent on impossible luck, then every thinking being in the universe shares a common bond. They're all dancing on the same knife's edge, all balanced on the precipice between existence and oblivion. This realization leads to the most ambitious project in their history, working with all 5 forms of intelligence on their planet: the ocean dwellers, the aerial mathematicians, the fungal overmind, the insect supercolonies, and their own technological civilization. They begin planning something unprecedented. They're going to send a message to the cosmos, but not the kind of radio signal that humans might imagine. They're going to engineer life itself to carry their story across the void between stars. The message they're preparing will challenge everything we think we know about life's place in the universe, and it's a message that's already on its way to us across the vast darkness of space. The final chapter of our story zooms out to cosmic scale, using our alternate Earth as a lens to understand something profound about life's place in the universe. If dinosaurs could continue for 66 million more years and still produce intelligence, if 5 separate lineages could evolve consciousness independently on a single world, what does this tell us about the cosmos itself? The answer comes through the eyes of our alternate Earth's astronomers, the thoughtful ones and their remarkable allies. Over the past several thousand years, since their discovery of the near miss that gave them existence, they've been scanning the heavens with increasing sophistication. And what they've found has revolutionized their understanding of life itself. They've discovered signals from not just 1 or 2 nearby systems, but from dozens. Each signal tells a story of near catastrophe and narrow survival. Each one represents a world that won its own cosmic lottery against impossible odds. Let me take you on a tour of these worlds through the data that the thoughtful ones have gathered. The first signal comes from a star system just 8 light-years away, where they've detected the chemical signatures of a thriving biosphere that's completely unlike anything on Earth. This planet experienced a series of massive solar flares 4 billion years ago that stripped away most of its atmosphere and wiped out all carbon-based life. But life found a way. Silicon-based organisms, originally just simple crystalline structures in the planet's crust, evolved to fill the empty ecological niches. Over billions of years, they developed into complex forms that think with crystal matrices instead of neural networks. Their consciousness operates through quantum mechanical processes in their silicon structures, allowing them to process information in ways that would seem like magic to carbon-based life. These silicon beings communicate through modulated electromagnetic fields and build cities that look like vast geometric crystals growing from the landscape. They've achieved a form of technological civilization that's based on manipulating atomic structures directly, essentially thinking matter into new configurations through quantum mechanical processes. The second signal comes from a world of eternal storms, where the planet's rapid rotation and intense magnetic field create hurricanes that never die. These storms are so massive and long-lived that they've become stable environments in their own right. And in the calm eyes of these perpetual hurricanes, something remarkable has evolved. Intelligence emerged in the quiet centers of these storms, in creatures that exist partially as organized energy fields and partially as physical matter. They think with electromagnetic patterns that span the entire eye of their storm homes, processing information through interactions between their biological components and the electrical activity of the storm systems themselves. These storm beings have learned to control weather patterns across their entire planet, using their intimate connection with atmospheric dynamics to engineer climate conditions that support ever more complex forms of storm-based life. Their civilization exists in the sky itself, in the organized energy patterns of controlled weather systems. But perhaps the most remarkable discovery comes from an ice world orbiting a red dwarf star. The planet's surface is frozen solid, covered by miles of ice that never melts. But beneath that ice lies an ocean of liquid methane, heated by radioactive decay in the planet's core. And in that alien sea, consciousness has emerged in forms that challenge our very definition of life. The beings in this methane ocean think with chemical processes that operate at temperatures that would instantly freeze any Earth-based life. They're essentially living reactions, complex chemical cascades that maintain coherent patterns across vast distances in their liquid methane environment. Their thoughts are chemistry itself, their memories are molecular configurations, their dreams are new chemical compounds that have never existed before. They've built a technological civilization based entirely on chemistry, creating tools and structures through precisely controlled chemical reactions. Their cities are vast three-dimensional networks of chemical processes. Their art forms are new molecules that exist solely for their aesthetic properties. Their libraries are chemical archives that store information in molecular configurations. Each of these worlds represents a completely different solution to the puzzle of consciousness, a unique path that thinking beings can take when circumstances force innovation. And the thoughtful ones have realized something profound. Every single one of these civilizations exists because of some cosmic accident that could have gone either way. The silicon world survived its solar flares because its planet happened to have just the right chemical composition in its crust. The storm world developed its weather patterns because of a precise balance between rotation rate, magnetic field strength, and atmospheric composition. The ice world maintained its subsurface ocean because its orbit placed it at exactly the right distance from its dim star. In every case, the emergence of intelligence required not just time and stability, but incredible luck. A cosmic near-miss here, a planetary collision there, a supernova that happened at just the right distance to trigger evolutionary innovation without causing extinction. The universe, it seems, is full of worlds that danced on knife edges and somehow managed not to fall. But here's what really amazes the thoughtful ones. Despite the incredible diversity of these alien intelligences, they all seem to converge on similar insights about existence itself. The silicon beings have developed mathematical descriptions of reality that parallel discoveries made by the storm creatures and the ice world chemists. Different forms of consciousness, evolving under completely different conditions, arriving at remarkably similar truths about the nature of the universe. This convergence suggests something profound about consciousness itself. It implies that awareness, regardless of its physical substrate, tends to discover the same fundamental patterns in reality. Intelligence, it seems, is not just an accident of evolution, but a feature of the universe itself, a way for the cosmos to understand itself through thinking beings. Armed with this understanding, the 5 forms of intelligence on our alternate Earth have embarked on the most ambitious project in the history of any world. They're creating a message to send to the cosmos, but it's unlike any message that human scientists have ever conceived. Instead of radio signals that could be intercepted and decoded, they're engineering life itself to carry their story across the void. Working together, the oceanic cephalopods providing biological expertise, the aerial mathematicians calculating trajectories, the insect supercolonies managing massive construction projects, the fungal overmind coordinating planetary-scale logistics, and the thoughtful ones providing technological solutions. They're creating something unprecedented. They're designing bacteria that can survive the journey between stars. But these aren't ordinary microorganisms. These bacteria have been engineered to carry information in their DNA, not just genetic information for their own survival, but the story of Earth's near miss and the explosion of consciousness that followed. The DNA of these cosmic messengers contains encoded histories of all 5 intelligent species on their world, mathematical proofs discovered by the aerial creatures, chemical formulas developed by the oceanic dwellers, philosophical insights achieved by the fungal overmind, organizational principles learned by the insect supercolonies, and technological innovations created by the thoughtful ones. But more than just information, these bacterial ambassadors carry a profound message about the nature of existence itself. Their genetic code tells the story of how consciousness emerged, not once, but 5 times on a single world. How intelligence found completely different paths to awareness, how thinking beings learned to cooperate despite their fundamental differences. The message encoded in these microscopic ambassadors is both scientific and philosophical. It says that life is more fragile than anyone imagined, balanced on knife edges of probability that defy comprehension. But it also says that life is more persistent than anyone hoped, capable of finding ways to survive and think and dream under conditions that seem impossible. These bacterial messengers have been launched toward dozens of nearby star systems, riding on solar winds and gravitational slingshots that will carry them across interstellar distances over millions of years. Some will be destroyed by radiation, others will be captured by gas giants or burned up in stellar atmospheres. But some, perhaps just a few, will find their way to other worlds where intelligent beings might discover them. And when those alien intelligences decode the genetic libraries contained in these cosmic bacteria, they'll learn that they're not alone in dancing on the edge of existence. They'll discover that consciousness has emerged countless times across the galaxy, each time through different near misses and narrow escapes, each time finding its own unique path to awareness. The message concludes with a meditation on contingency and convergence that might be the most profound insight any intelligence has ever achieved. It speaks of countless Earths across parallel possibilities, each with its own unique symphony of consciousness, all balanced on the edge of cosmic chance, all reaching out to find they're not alone in their improbable existence. In how many universes did that asteroid hit? In how many did it miss? The mathematics suggest infinite variations, infinite possibilities, infinite worlds where consciousness emerged or failed to emerge based on the tiniest changes in initial conditions. But in this universe, in this timeline, the asteroid missed. The age of dinosaurs continued. Intelligence emerged not once but 5 times. And now, encoded in microscopic ambassadors traveling between the stars, the story of that near miss and everything that followed is spreading across the galaxy. The final image of our story is this: vast networks of intelligence connected across interstellar distances, sharing stories of near extinction and narrow survival, celebrating the beautiful improbability of consciousness arising from matter, a cosmic community of minds that exist because they all won impossible lotteries, all danced on knife edges without falling, all discovered that the universe's greatest gift is not certainty, but the magnificent uncertainty that makes awareness possible. We are all, it seems, dancing on the edge of cosmic chance, and in that dance we find not loneliness, but connection, not fear, but wonder, not endings, but infinite beginnings spiraling out into the darkness between stars, carrying the light of consciousness to worlds we cannot yet imagine. This is what the universe whispers about life, that it is both more fragile and more persistent than we ever dared to dream. And that message, encoded in the very structure of existence itself, is already on its way to us across the vast spaces between worlds.